The aristocracy maintains social hierarchy and privilege. This rule highlights one of the most defining aspects of aristocratic systems: the establishment and preservation of a rigid social hierarchy and the privilege that comes with belonging to the aristocratic class. The aristocracy is not only about governance or power, but also about maintaining a clear division between the elite and the general populace. The social hierarchy ensures that the aristocratic class is distinct, and this division is protected through cultural, political, and legal means. Introduction. The aristocratic social order. At the heart of aristocratic systems lies a social hierarchy where power, wealth, and privilege are distributed unequally. In aristocracies, there is an inherent belief that certain individuals or families are more fit to rule, primarily because of their birth, heritage, or wealth. Aristocrats, often labeled as the noble class, are typically the highest strata of society. They hold privileges that allow them to control economic resources, dictate societal norms, and even influence political decisions. In many societies, the aristocracy has historically justified its rule through the idea of divine right or the belief that God ordained their position at the top of the social pyramid. In other cases, the ruling class might have established its dominance through military conquest, inheritance, or wealth accumulation. For much of history, aristocracies were not only political entities but also social entities. They governed how people were treated, who had access to resources, and who could hold power. Rule No. 2. The idea that aristocracy maintains social hierarchy and privilege serves as a fundamental principle in aristocratic systems. The upper class's goal is to preserve their elite status and control, which they achieve by ensuring that social distinctions remain intact and that there are clear boundaries between them and the rest of society. The formation of aristocratic social hierarchies in aristocracies are often rigid and inherited. Unlike democratic systems that promote the idea of equal opportunity and social mobility, aristocracies rely heavily on hereditary status to maintain order. Families who have held titles or wealth for generations are seen as inherently superior to others, and their social position is usually guaranteed by law, culture, or tradition. Noble lineages and hereditary titles. Aristocracies often revolve around noble families who hold titles such as dukes, earls, barons, and counts. These titles are passed down from one generation to the next, establishing a lineage-based society. Nobles with hereditary titles are often given legal privileges such as the right to govern specific territories, collect taxes, or participate in the ruling processes of a kingdom. In many cases, these noble families were granted power by monarchs or through inheritance, and their names became symbols of authority. The social status of aristocrats was passed on from parents to children, and this ensured that only a small, select group of individuals could wield power and influence. Rigid social structures. In an aristocracy, the social hierarchy is usually divided into multiple layers. At the top, you have the aristocratic families and royal bloodlines. Beneath them are various classes of nobility who may not have the same level of political power but still enjoy wealth and privilege. These could include lesser nobles or knights, who may not own vast estates but still have the social status of being part of the elite. Below the nobility, you have the middle class, which includes merchants, professionals, and landowners. These individuals are generally wealthier than peasants or laborers, but are still below the nobility in terms of status. At the bottom of the hierarchy are the peasants, serfs, and slaves, who have little to no power, and their social position is determined by birth, which they cannot change. Land ownership and economic control. One of the primary tools used by aristocracies to maintain their power and status is land ownership. In a feudal system, for example, land was the most important asset, and the aristocracy held vast estates. These lands provided the resources, crops, minerals, livestock, that sustained the economy, and the aristocrats used their control over the land to assert dominance over the peasants who worked on it. Aristocrats were often given land by monarchs as a reward for military service or loyalty, which solidified their place in the social order. In return for land, peasants and workers would pay rents, offer services, or work the land. The landholding aristocracy used this relationship to maintain a clear distinction between their wealth and the rest of the population. Cultural and legal reinforcement of social hierarchy. The preservation of social hierarchy within an aristocracy is not only maintained by economic control, but also through cultural and legal practices. Aristocracies frequently used law and tradition to preserve the distinct social boundaries between the elite and commoners. Cultural norms and traditions. Aristocratic families often had specific rituals, etiquette, and ceremonies that reinforced their status. These might include ritual feasts, courtly behaviors, and elaborate marriage arrangements. Social gatherings and public appearances by the aristocracy were often intended to display the nobility's superior culture, refinement, and class distinction. Court life in many monarchies was a major feature of aristocratic existence. In places like Louis XIV's France, the nobility was expected to adhere to strict codes of conduct, from their clothing and speech to their behavior in court. These customs were designed to show the nobility's refinement and elegance, while commoners were expected to adhere to a different set of standards. Aristocratic education was also essential in preserving the hierarchy. Noble children were typically educated in ways that set them apart from commoners, learning subjects like philosophy, the arts, rhetoric, and diplomacy, often under private tutors. This elite education helped ensure that aristocrats maintained their intellectual and social dominance over lower classes. Legal privileges and rights. In many aristocratic systems, the law actively reinforced the social order. Nobles had legal privileges that were not available to commoners, including exemptions from taxes, special judicial rights, and sometimes even immunity from prosecution. Nobles were often tried in special courts, separate from those of commoners, and could escape certain punishments that would befall non-nobles. In feudal societies, these legal privileges also extended to landownership rights and the ability to pass down property. Certain laws allowed the aristocracy to consolidate land through inheritance laws, such as primogeniture, where the eldest son inherits the estate, which ensured that vast estates remained in the hands of a single family. This helped prevent the erosion of aristocratic power and kept the wealth concentrated within a few elite families. Preserving privilege. The role of marriage and alliances, a key aspect of maintaining aristocratic power and privilege, is through strategic marriages and alliances. Marriage within the aristocracy was often not about love, but rather about preserving family status, strengthening political influence, and consolidating wealth. Marriage as a political tool. Aristocratic marriages were typically arranged for the purpose of securing land, sealing alliances, and expanding influence. For example, European noble families would often marry into other aristocratic families in order to form alliances, secure territories, or create economic partnerships. These alliances were not limited to one region or country. They often spanned multiple European nations. Through marriage, aristocrats could expand their networks and protect their interests. Marrying into another powerful family meant the possibility of gaining political influence, securing military support, or strengthening their position in society. The children of these marriages were expected to uphold the social legacy of their families. Consolidation of wealth and power. In addition to political alliances, aristocratic families used marriage to consolidate wealth and property. Dowries, inheritances, and the passing of estates were often negotiated as part of the marriage contract. This ensured that aristocratic families remained wealthy and maintained control over their land and resources, perpetuating their privileged status for generations. The endurance of aristocratic social hierarchies, while modernity has led to the decline of aristocratic power in many parts of the world, the remnants of aristocratic social hierarchies still exist today. The social privilege that comes with aristocratic lineage may not carry the same political power it once did, but it still grants individuals access to certain elite social networks, wealth, and cultural influence. In some parts of the world, aristocratic families continue to wield influence, although in a more ceremonial or cultural capacity. Families with noble titles often remain prominent in business, philanthropy, and the arts, and their legacy is sometimes used to maintain a sense of social prestige. Moreover, many modern aristocratic families still hold on to their landholdings and inherited wealth, which maintains their place within a new elite class. While traditional aristocracy may have faded, social privilege based on wealth and heritage continues to shape modern society in subtle but powerful ways. Conclusion: the enduring legacy of social hierarchy and privilege rule no. 2 of aristocracy. The aristocracy maintains social hierarchy and privilege, is a central aspect of how aristocratic systems functioned and continue to shape modern societies. By creating a rigid social hierarchy, aristocrats were able to separate themselves from the rest of society and maintain economic, political, and cultural dominance. This system was reinforced through cultural practices, legal privileges, strategic marriages, and the perpetuation of aristocratic titles and wealth. While the power and influence of aristocracy have diminished in many parts of the world, the social privilege that the aristocracy once held continues to be an important feature of social and political dynamics. Whether in the form of inheritance, networking, or exclusive cultural influence, aristocratic families continue to play a role in shaping modern society's elite class and social hierarchy. Understanding how aristocracies maintain their power and privilege through these social structures gives us a better understanding of how systems of inequality and social stratification can persist, even in the face of political and economic changes.